What kind of person makes a yokozuna? We guess one who takes to sumo like a duck to water, as Terunofuji clearly did at 15. I practiced for about a week at a local dojo, then entered a youth tournament staged by top division man Kyokushuzan and ended up winning, he claims, putting success that day down to size. He was then introduced to Hakuho's father, who spoke to a Japanese friend, who agreed to take Teru to Japan and sound out sumo stables on the prospect of recruiting him. That was 2007. The young Teru travelled over with his mother, then spent a week living at Oguruma Stable, all the while impressed with how modern Tokyo seemed compared to cities back home. But on that occasion, he was not taken on, and thus returned home to dabble in skate park ownership. So, why was he so keen to forego business success for a life in sumo? I'd like to say it was because of sheer love of the sport, he begins. But in truth, I thought I could get even richer by reaching the top of pro sumo. I reproach myself now for thinking it would be so easy. His love for sumo began around age 12, when Asashoryu was yokozuna and Hakuho was rising fast. So many Mongolians were watching sumo on TV that the streets were near empty, he recalls, adding, "I thought those wrestlers looked pretty cool, especially Kaiyo. He was what we regarded as a real man." Nevertheless, until the age of 17, Teru mainly focused on judo, and was tipped to win the National Junior Championships. Alas, a last-minute rule change prevented grabbing of the legs. He instinctively grabbed one and got disqualified. The bitterness of that loss, he says, compounded by his coach's apoplectic reaction, left a scar. The man who pushed him towards judo, Hakuho's father again, then took him to a Mongolian sumo event. The pressure of being accompanied by a wrestling legend clearly affected the young Teru, who promptly lost in round 1. But Hakuho's father admired his respectful conduct, meaning that a few months later, Hakuho himself would be called in to help. The yokozuna spoke to future student Ishiura's father, principal of Johoku High School in Tottori, about making a place for Teru in the school's ambitious sumo club. Ishiura Sr. agreed, and in March 2010, Teru, along with the future Ichinojo and Mito Ryu, was bound for Johoku. There he would room with Ichinojo, and, being older, was asked to watch over him, and occasionally jolt him out of his languid fighting style. A fourth Mongolian was initially in the party, only to soon become homesick and buy a return ticket. Teru, meanwhile, absorbed Japanese language and culture quickly to the extent he could feel superior to the other two. He also abhorred the Ishiura doctrine of, although you're a third year, you'll be treated like a first year, inwardly cursing his younger Japanese colleagues for talking big when, unlike him, they'd never managed a company. But he soon learned that no respect his way was deserved if he couldn't beat them in practice. Luckily, a Mongolian coach was on hand to translate sumo terms and develop his technique quickly. And within just 6 months, he'd become a dohyo monster, winning all his bouts at the 2010 Okinawa Championships to help deliver Johoku's first ever national inter-high title. He'd achieved this success based on a strict regime which included bans on sweet food and all drinks except tea and water, which he mostly respected, and cruel punishments for breaking curfew, as he famously did when going to an internet cafe. Our Mongolian coach went berserk and made my friends and I do push-ups for 1 hour solid, he insists. One suspects that was merely the start of his sumo-related horrors.